So hotel rooms and lottery tickets for jazz is apparently a sought-after commodity in Cape Town this weekend. And then, of course, there's the Cape Argus. Michael Nell has some good news for us following the cricket not being so good news. We tried to avoid it all day. We made no announcements from up here. So where's Michael? Please, while the Commissioner and General Sithole gets up onto the podium.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Nell, and I represent SAPSA, the South African Practical Shooting Association. We are affiliated to SASCO, which is the South African Shooting Sport Confederation, which again is our parent body and is linked to SASCOC, which is, as everybody knows, South African Sports Congress and Olympic Committee. This weekend, from Friday until Sunday, we hosted the Africa Championships in the shooting sport of practical pistol shooting. We had 17 countries represented at this particular shoot, and that included places like France, Russia, Czechoslovakia, and our neighbors, Namibia, and of course, Zimbabwe. At this point, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank Brigadier Mabula and his team for facilitating the permits and making it an easy transition for the international competitors to visit and compete in our competition. There were 13 gold medals up for grabs on this particular day. South African team, Proteas, scooped up 11 of these 13 medals. 8 team medals and 3 individual medals. The beauty of this is the Africa lady champion is a 14-year-old girl from Polokwane. In October last year, we attended the USA World Championship, and our team, the pistol shooting Proteas, we scooped up 8 gold medals. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I just thought and ladies, we'd start the day off with some good news instead of losing the cricket.
Thank you, Michael, and congratulations to the teams. We've got a rather full day today. There's some adjustments and amendments to the program, which I'll share with you after the Commissioner has spoken. General Sithole, if you would please come up, Sire.
Facilitator, thank you very much for the opportunity. I would like to start by acknowledging the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, the honorable members, with all protocol observed. I'm going to be very short. Fortunately, I'm not giving an obituary of the National Commissioner. It's just a mere introduction. Yeah, firstly, I just came to introduce the mother of SAPS. And I just came to present to you the transformation model of South Africa. And just presenting to you the bravest leader who leads the biggest organization or department in government and in South Africa, leading 195,000 members. Remember, the South African Police Service sometimes is bigger than 3 times other departments, and is one of the biggest organizations in the world. She's going to do a presentation of the SAPS input to this particular summit. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause to bring her on the stage. Thank you.
General Sithole, I think being the head of policing, I'm concerned that you don't understand the concept command. That was too long. Let me thank this opportunity from the facilitator for allowing me to be up here. In terms of protocols, I'd like to recognize the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, honorable members present here. I saw many various stakeholders from various associations, research entities, labor associations. To all of you, let me just sum up all of us here and say all protocols are observed. I thank you on behalf of the service for us to just make some input into this very important conference, and let me also take this opportunity to thank the Police Secretariat for taking time to organize this very important dialogue. I am told that yesterday there were robust discussions. I've seen a list of key issues that have been raised, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to cover some through the input that we're making as subs, but ordinarily for those that we were not able to touch on, we'll take this as part course because there's a lot of work post this dialogue for us to be able to look into matters. A lot of what I'm going to say are things that most of you may be au fait with, but we thought it is important for us to give context in terms of the work that we're doing as South African Police Service, as well as to give perspective in terms of the evolution of our work around management or the firearms management within the policing environment. Right at the beginning, as I introduce our input, I'd like to reflect on some of the background aspects relating to the evolution of processes around management of firearms within the policing department. You would be aware that in 1996, the then Minister of Safety and Security appointed a special task team with a view to investigate the legislation and regulation of firearms in the country, as well as to look into the administration of the firearms register, and lastly to look into issues relating to policy in issuance of firearm licenses. The Firearm Control Bill was drafted to replace the Arms Ammunition Act of 1969, Act 75. In 2000, this very parliament passed a new act, the Firearm Control Act. Subsequent to that, regulations were promulgated in 2004. And in that slide also, I show a number of iterations in terms of some of the amendments of the Act and the regulation that have taken place. And the big message out of that slide is that it's a journey, and I'm sure even out of this dialogue, there will be issues that we may need to ask the Secretariat to look into, because the management of this space is not static. We respond to developments, we respond to how it is evolving, and the role of legislation and policies is very, very crucial, and it's got to be responsive, relevant, and ensure that it enables us to be able to manage this space as the police. In addition to what I mentioned earlier on, there are also regional collaboration issues where we are looking at the fact that the traffic and transport and migration of these firearms at times do not recognize visas and passports. They do find their way into various countries. And I think this is why an additional call was made by the then minister to the African Union member states in terms of the Bamako Declaration to ensure that we can share certain protocols, we can share certain approaches in this regard, the circulation and transfer and use of small arms and light weapons. A draft AU strategy was adopted to support implementation by member states. We continue as regions, both SARPCO, YAPCO, CAPCO, and WAPCO, to collaborate on this matter. We jointly also recognize the International Firearm Destruction Day in July, where we continue to work hard to ensure that we also free the region of illicit firearms. In order to address the need for legislation in this environment, the Firearms Control Act was developed, and the objectives, I'm sure, have been well articulated yesterday by various speakers, but maybe just for recap, we should remind ourselves that the objectives were to reduce firearm-related crimes in South Africa. That issue remains significant even today, and the reason for chasing these objectives remains real. So we work hard as police with other stakeholders to chase the realization of their objective. To effectively control all legally possessed firearms in South Africa, I noted some of the issues that were raised yesterday were around that, to say even though we are working hard to ensure that there is legal possession of firearms, the control of that and the management once those firearms are possessed is an area that we should also keenly look into. To prevent the proliferation of illegally possessed firearms, as well as to maintain reliable firearms control and management systems. As I sum up our introduction, licenses issued in terms of the previous act, the arms and ammunition, remained valid for a period of 5 years from the date on which the Firearms Control Act came into operation. The firearms that exceeded limitation in terms of the FCA had to be disposed of. Also, internal processes and procedures were put in place to facilitate the replacement of old licenses, the disposal of excess individual firearms, but I also know that there are still other issues that are lingering in this space that would require further attention. The last bullet really just shows those people or those owners of firearms, and I think it's something that is known to us. We can refer to the presentation on that score. We are reflecting also on the resources that were allocated to assist in the implementation of this act. A once-off allocation was made of about 63 million, and a number of issues were looked into, ranging from vehicles, equipment, as well as human and other physical resources. The maintenance of those resources were not budgeted for as part of that once-off whatever. We adopted them as part of our mainstream budget. What was also crucial, and I think in there is just to show that the implementation was resourced. What is also significant in terms of what was done to implement the FCA was related to the implementation of the designated firearms officers, the DFOs. Because it was necessary to have those nodal points, to have those dedicated operational champions to be able to service the public in this regard. When that was done, a pilot program, there were two models that were looked into. First, the establishment of a firearm registration center model, which was piloted in Gauteng, but it was since discontinued because the second one looked to be more user-friendly, more accessible, and more amenable to our operations as subs. And that was the model that looked at enabling the station model to do this, to roll out this designated firearms officer concept. We also invested, and let me also say that those designated firearm officers, it would depend on subs environment to subs environment. Where there is a lot of load of work, they are dedicated to just become that. Where the floor is light, it is an add-on function to one of the officers. The designated firearm officer training focused on a number of issues, as you'd see there: firearms control legislation, the practical approaches to management of this requirements of this act, enhanced firearm register system, all those issues that are indicated there, including the issue of the integrated ballistic testing approaches. There was also ministerial intervention to assist the implementation because there was a relapse in the process, backlogs were picked up. So there was an audit in 2010 which showed that there were many outstanding applications. A follow-up audit found that those were the outstanding applications were highly reduced. A lot of work was done, dedicated teams of officers working long hours to ensure that we catch up with that which was outstanding. And as you can see in that slide, we indicate that all outstanding categories of applications were finalized during August 2011, and just above 1 million outstanding applications were handled during that time. The huge flow of applications, insufficient administrative capacity, late submission of applications had contributed to this implementation relapse. I noted yesterday that the issue of amnesty was raised. We touched on the issue of amnesty declarations that were done in the past. As you would see that the Minister of Safety and Security in 2005, as well as in 2010, declared an amnesty. And in 2005, that amnesty resulted in 33,246 firearms being submitted into the service. Ammunition, as you would see there, slightly above 500,000, 608,974. In 2010, a much lesser yield was realized, but still we managed to net those guns that are indicated there, close to 12,000, 11,712, and ammunition, 129,000. All in all, the two amnesty declarations resulted in 44,000 or close to 45,000 guns and close to 800,000 ammunition. What I've been told is that part of the discussions yesterday was that perhaps there is room and time for considering another amnesty, and I think it's a good point to be discussed further with the relevant and significant people, including the minister. The next slide, we share with you firearm applications since 2004 to date, and there is categorization in terms of these applications, but in total we show that since that period we have had 3,189,861 firearm applications, and we concluded 3,106,438 applications. So the progress, I think, has been good, and the response has been good. I continue to share with you our data in terms of what we have recorded as legal firearms in South Africa. Individual owners, official institutions, non-official institutions, and clearly, as you would see on the beamed data, individual owners are the most owners. There are 1.7 million owners, and among them they own 3 million plus firearms. The official institutions, we have 425. They own about 1.3 rounded off firearms. Non-official institutions, about 9,000, and they own about 136,000 firearms. That's what we see as, that we report from our records as active legal firearms. The next slide, we share data in terms of inactive firearms, legal and illicit. The categories are indicated there as voluntary surrendered, confiscated firearms, destructed firearms. The voluntary surrendered firearms, 126,849, ammunition in excess of 1.5 million. The confiscated firearms, 143,160, the ammunition in excess of 1.8 million. The destructed firearms, since the period that I've indicated, and I'm sure my members will clarify that, I think it's a 2004 period. We can clarify that when we answer questions. 676,599. I heard that an issue was raised on the definition of what a firearm is, and we will engage on the issue that has been raised yesterday. We also indicate to you Section 102, declared unfit to possess firearm at 8.6 thousand, accounting for 8.6 thousand individuals, accounting for over 10,000 firearms. We continue to share with you what we have as governance structures that we're using that we engage with to manage these processes. We believe communication is cardinal and important. We have prioritized that as a very important internal stakeholder. We believe we can do more, and in fact we should do more to communicate with society and gun users and ordinary citizens so that we can heighten responsibility around the use, the keeping of firearms. This is why national communication is important, and I'll talk a little bit later about some of the issues that have been done to heighten the communications awareness. But I would say it's an area that we would like to grow further. Technology management services in terms of the systems that we're using to manage this environment. I'll mention a little bit later about the evolving of the systems management in this space and some of the challenges we're facing and how we hope to mitigate those as we go forward. The Criminal Record Center is a very important stakeholder, and I noted yesterday that the issue of profiling and assessing those that are applying was raised, and I think this is where the Criminal Record Center and other platforms become important to assist us to manage this space. The national supply chain, of course, in terms of assisting us, particularly looking inward to identify, mark our guns and make sure that we can trace them from birth to death. So they play a very important role, and also assisting us to buy appropriately as the police, as we are important users of these devices. Legal services, very important, because sharpening our policies and our regulations and refreshing where we have to refresh all the time, and giving our inputs to the Secretariat, they play a very important role. The external stakeholders are many and varied. We have identified some of them there, and the list, I think, is much longer than we have there. I would add, for instance, I was just looking at that, there are those that are busy with research and those type of services. We are consumers of the feedback that they give in this space. During the preparatory space, a lot of work was done around the issues of communication to develop a sub-brand that identifies the firearms space. We printed a lot of posters. We developed and designed brochures that educate the public. We've also ensured that our communication and our information is put on online using our subs, intranet, as well as the government website. And as I've said, this is an area we would like to grow and do more about. We would like to look at building a gun-friendly society by using platforms such as our school safety committees to educate the young people about the importance of guns and management of those and stuff like that. So we would be doing a little bit more to ensure that even our students who are now starting to take guns into schools, we educate them. So we'll use the partnership that we have, for instance, with the Department of Basic Education, where we adopt schools, we link schools to police. We'll use that to educate our young. We would heighten more our awareness and our outreach and our engagement with various stakeholders to ensure that communication around this space is heightened. There are issues that are related to maladministration, corruption, and some of those ill practices that we have to deal with. Internally, we're doing a lot around ensuring that we can also use our systems to assist us to deter such maladministration or ill practices. In this regard, access to the system user codes have been changed so that we can get a better hold on who accesses the system, who gives authority. We can backtrack and be able to analyze. We've also introduced quarterly anti-corruption work sessions with members because we realize that Not only are we dealing with external corruption, we're also dealing with internal corruption. And this is why we do not hesitate when that happens for us to intervene, to ensure that we deter our own members from participating in these malpractices and illicit interventions. We are also limiting access to certain functions to particular people so that the tracking, the monitoring, the assessing is made easier. We're working very closely with our TMS to refresh this environment. We've also introduced restrictions in terms of member use groups. What we are saying there is that a person in Gauteng should not be able to process applications. It's almost province focused so that we can narrow these access issues. The issue of vetting regional commanders, management information center of officials and secretaries by crime intelligence is being prioritized. I would say there's still more to be done in that space. We are capacitating our vetting teams in CI because vetting has become a very crucial element, not only in this area but elsewhere. So they are swamped with a lot of work, but we are doing already that. I note that issue of just not focusing on, the DFOs and all those would have also to ensure that we accelerate their vetting and that type of issue. I note the fact that that's the internal focus. The issue that was also raised is how we profile applicants, which is the external profile. I think it's an area that we need to look into. Constant job rotation is another area that we've looked into within regions so that we don't build and breed familiarity. We think it will assist us in certain circumstances to ensure that we manage some of the challenges that we're having. We are building a quality assurance unit, and we've started introducing the issue of quality assurance commanders so that we can look at our process flow and quality assure those aspects. We have been to the portfolio committee to present our work in this space, and this was around our turnaround strategy, where we are saying what else do we need to do to continue to improve our offerings in this area. There are issues relating to infrastructure and space. We are progressively dealing with those. We recognize that we need to do more to accommodate the growing needs of this implementation of this management of firearms within SAPS. And in that regard, we are working closely with the relevant department that is responsible for this. We are reviewing processes for applications so that we can start having efficient processes and process flows. So as part of the turnaround, we're looking into those aspects. We are looking into the upgrading and enhancement of the firearm registration system and the streamlining also of this system. We're looking at the revision of the CFR provincial and station structures so that they can talk to the new strategic imperatives and the issues that require us to improve management of this space. We're reviewing policies for regulating estate firearms. We're looking even at the application forms, e-applications, which have been significantly delayed. We would like to get those areas improved so that they form part of this turnaround strategies. We're looking at upgrading the current printing machines, but we're also in talks with the government printers who are saying to us the licenses must start having certain, security features so that they are not just ordinary licenses, So we are also engaging with the government printers, looking at the technology that they are having now to print the new passports and our new IDs, and they have very interesting ideas that we would like to explore and look at whether it can assist us in improving in this space. Yes, we have challenges, and there are many. I've already touched on our infrastructural challenges, and we're looking into those. Turnaround time to finalize application is negatively affected by these infrastructural challenges that we're having. The segregated buildings that are not sitting in a common place are also a challenge, and as we're looking at that, we're looking at how we can move towards complexes that are, single points of intervention, and then it would make our management of this much better. The incomplete implementation of the firearms control system has been an issue for us because this is a system that was commissioned, I think in 2007, General Cruiser. 2004? Yes, actually. 2004, and up to now, it is not completed. What we've done to deal with this, because that contract has also ended, we've asked the CSIR to review our initial RFP, to review the delivery, to give us a very good gauge of what has been achieved, not achieved, and what we can do with what we have to advance the further development of this system. We're looking at a system that would give us e-application capabilities and other modern capabilities that the system may not be having. So the work that we're doing with CSIR, we believe will be able to catapult us to a level where we can have a better firearms control system as we go forward. There are legislative gaps, and I think they were well articulated yesterday. We are looking at the incongruence, for instance, of the lifespan of the license as well as the competency certificate, issues of how we start conceptualizing and identifying and defining fit and proper attributes of an applicant, because it's a very broad church application of the concept. The competency on the part of the DFO to assess the mental and physical state of the applicant, and I think it's onerous to think that the DFO can do that. We must look for other processes that would start assisting, legislative processes that will start assisting us to be able to deal with those type of aspects. In conclusion, let me say, ladies and gentlemen, the firearms register turnaround strategy and action plan were developed and are being implemented to improve service delivery. We will embrace a lot of the inputs that are coming out of this exercise. We will be touching base very closely with our police secretariat to continue to highlight gaps that we think may be plugged to assist us to manage better. The South African Police Service Management and personnel are committed and are dedicated to ensure that efficient implementation of the Firearms Control Act takes place. Issues of discipline and fighting corruption are high on our agenda, and this is why we did not hesitate when we picked up some of these issues to pursue criminal charges, to pursue disciplinary action, to fire some of the people, and we will continue to do that. I think the other area, as I conclude for us, is looking at probably a new area of inspections, in particular around dealerships and all those. It's an area that we would like to engage the Secretariat on. We believe it's an area that needs to be looked into. Community awareness is huge on our agenda, is being profiled as an area that we need to look into as we go forward. Just finally to say, when I was talking about the DFOs, to date we've trained over 3,441 DFOs under this FCA Act. And we look forward to working with everybody to ensure that we become a premier agency to manage the whole issue of firearms regulation, management, issuance, and related aspects. I thank you all.
Thank you to our National Commissioner, General Pierre. I'm going to hand over to General Sithole to take about 15 minutes of questions and comments. Can we ask the august House to please ask one question or make one comment, and trust that someone else will ask your question or make your comment. Is that okay? So please, can we restrict ourselves to one comment or one question so that we can have more people participate in the question time. So I'm handing over to, where's General Sithole? Okay, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much once more, Facilitator. Can I just ask for a round of applause again for the presentation by the Commissioner? It's for the purpose of my promotion, is my boss. We're just opening the presentation to any questions. If you allow me, I will take the first 5 questions then and afford an opportunity for response. Then we can go to a second round. I'll take the honorable member as number 1. I'll count 2, 3, 4, 5. Welcome, honorable member.
Thank you very much, General Sithole. In August 2014, we as a committee were told about the lack of training of the DFO. And today, we are told of a no competency on the part of the DFO to assess mental and physical state of the applicant. To me, they almost the same thing. And my question is, when are the DFOs going to be trained once and for all? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, honorable member. Just before I take the second question, I just want to acknowledge and announce the arrival of our Deputy Minister of the Police, Minister Sochi, that she's here. Thank you very much. Honorable member.
Thank you, General Sithole. My question is 1. Who must ensure that all firearms submitted in an amnesty are safe? Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable member. I can go to the third hand.
Thank you, Commissioner. One of the issues that have been canvassed and spoken of at length is the suggestion of licensing an individual, not a firearm, which would make it a lot more easier for the department that deals with these registrations. Efficiency, it will contribute towards efficiency and a whole lot of things. I want to also just indicate my, I think, pleasure with the fact that you've indicated one crucial aspect. You want to promote a gun-friendly society. And from the group that we represent, that I represent, one of the things that we talk or have spoken a lot about is our willingness to assist whatever stakeholder that's there in training, in promoting, in taking the fear of guns from our societies. If it means going to schools, going to different institutions and departments just to assist. Basically, my input is how can we help? Can we partner in assisting in all of that? How can we help? Just indicate to us.
Thank you very much, sir. The fourth question. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, General. I don't think I'm going to be able to do justice. I have quite a few questions, but I'll stick to the one. It is no doubt that the abuse of firearms by members of SAPS and the public, especially in terms of domestic violence, is a serious challenge. The question that I have is, what process or mechanism have we got in place that the moment a matter is reported of domestic violence by a member of SAPS or the public, that firearm could be immediately taken away? And I'm saying this because one day is one day too late. What mechanisms have we got to take it away timelessly to prevent the abuse of that firearms at the expense of the vulnerable members of society, especially spouses, which seems to be a serious challenge in South Africa today? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take the last hand from the honorable member before the National Commission answers.
Thank you, Chairperson. I won't make an opening remark. I will ask a question. The Commissioner said in a conclusion that there's a turnaround strategy and an action plan as far as the Central Firearms Register is concerned. And then she said they are being implemented to improve service delivery, combat corruption, and ensure quality assurance. Now, my question to the Commissioner, Chairperson, is that in October last year, there was a court case where 7 applicants requested the issue of their firearms licenses. It was in the Gauteng division in the High Court. The founding of the court was that those licenses must be issued within 10 days. That was October last year. I was contacted yesterday that some of the applicants up to today didn't receive their licenses according to the finding and the order of the court. Now, the Commissioner was one of the respondents. She's actually in contempt of the court. Why do we have a situation like this? Because that is what the public say, there's no service delivery. They have to go to courts, it is costing them money, and even after a court finding and court order, they still don't receive their licenses. That's unacceptable.
Can I just thank the honorable speakers who've asked the question. I'm only given 15 minutes, but you've set a good standard because none of the questions amounted to a speech. It will stay within my 15 minutes. And that's a good example for those who are coming to ask questions. Can I give the floor to the National Commissioner? Thank you.
You are a general, we will listen to you.
Thank you very much, General. And some of the questions I'll ask the colleagues to answer. The first question was around assessing the mental and physical state of applicants. I do not believe that the DFO or an ordinary police person would have that capacity. And this is why I then said we would like to engage in this regard to look at whether there should not be a clause, a regulation that requires that we get some certificate, because this requires an expert, a medical person or somebody else to be able to tell us whether this person is fit mentally and physically to receive that type of thing. When you apply for jobs, normally they would say, give us your health report. They require you to go to a doctor to do other things. We believe it's an area that we should talk about and look at whether something has to be done in this space, and that's in the perspective in which I was talking about this matter. The second question was around firearms that are submitted under the amnesty clause or environment, the safekeeping, if they are submitted to us, we have a responsibility to keep them safe. It is the responsibility of the police, who are the collectors of these firearms, to keep them safe. To the extent that there are glitches and breaches, it is a matter that we as the police must manage and ensure that we get on top of that matter. But it is our responsibility. The licensing, the other question was around licensing an individual versus licensing a firearm. I think it's a little bit of a paradox, because if you look at the firearm as an asset and you look at a car as an asset, part of what the car manufacturers have done, they give a car a life. You know, through the VIN numbers and all those things, it must be born, it must come to an end. And I think because of the crucial aspect of this instrument and the damage it can cause to life, it must still also have that identity that we're able to track from beginning to end. And that must be harmonized and be blended with the, what we call it, with the licensing of an individual. So I think that's a discussion that should take place, to say, is it an either or a both? And listening to the question that was asked, I would say we need to dialogue, but my very limited, ill-informed sense tells me that it should be a both. Okay. The issue of how can we help, like they always say in FNB, we definitely shall reach out, because we believe we must throw everything and anything at this process, reaching out to the school children, talking to communities, so anything that can make a contribution towards this process of dealing and managing firearms in our country, we will embrace, and we will take you up on the offer and engage and look at what we can do to work together to ensure that we make South Africa a better place, and a place that can, you know, understand how to be a gun-friendly society. The other question was about abuse of firearms by members of SAPS and the public, and the question was, what do we do? From a SAPS point of view, this is why we have, you know, we have the commanders. If they notice behavior that is untoward in a particular member, maybe being moody, being snappy, or the wife comes and reports unsavory behavior of the member, it is the duty of the commander and the station commander and the immediate board to ensure that the first thing they do is to report and remove the firearm from the member, because the member could be in, you know, is in a prejudiced position, and having a firearm may not be a very helpful or a healthy state of affairs. We also request that when such things are observed, we have what we call employee health and well-being. Such a member should be referred to practitioners in that space. We have pastors, we have social workers, we have psychologists. Members should be referred there, but the removal of the gun is very important. And until such time that the commander, the station commander are satisfied with the fact that necessary intervention has been made, then the gun can be returned. I would submit that perhaps there could be weaknesses in implementing these processes. We need to keep this process of teaching, keeping awareness of commanders, colleagues around this matter very, very, very sharpened so that the abuse of firearms, the homicide, the femicides can be reduced. We track also the femicides and the homicides because it's important for us to check whether we're making progress or not making progress in managing our members' use of these firearms for these illicit activities of shooting others at home. The question around the application in Gauteng, what I would request is that we get details of that, and I'm sure our lawyers as well as the fiscal environment will look into those matters. And I shall say we are law-abiding citizens. Our intention is to ensure that we comply with the laws of this country. To the extent that there could be those glitches, we would like them to be addressed urgently. Thank you.
Thanks very much, General. Again, it's part of the police culture without abusing the platform. I would like to honor and acknowledge the presence, the arrival of our National Minister of Police, Minister, welcome. Thank you. I'm told I have 5 minutes left. It's just for 5 hands. And I would like to come decide if I had to be fair. First one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can we proceed in that order?
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to make an inquiry about the online reporting system for the dealers' reports, the status quo of that, and if possible, how much has been spent on it thus far.
Thank you very much. Let's take the second hand.
Morning. Martin Hood from the Security Industry Alliance. Following on from the Honourable Mr. Groenewald's comment, I'm aware of a court order against the National Commissioner and the Minister where they were found to be in contempt of court for not issuing licenses. What concerns me is that that particular applicant was both a foreign listed investor and was also a registered security service provider. So there's issues of negative messaging going overseas arising out of administrative issues. And then when I look at the governance structure set out by the National Commissioner, the external stakeholders excludes the security industry and the Security Industry Alliance, which is the representative of the security industry employer. And that may be one of the reasons why we're having some of these administrative problems, because the Security Industry Alliance is not even registered or regarded as a stakeholder. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That hand? The third hand?
Yes,
Thank you very much, sir. It was mine. My name is Fred Kamfer. I'm representing the South African Hunters and Game Conservation Association. In 2009, we took the Minister and the police to court on the inability to properly implement the new Firearms Control Act. We obtained a court order that declared all the old licenses to be deemed to remain valid until the main application we brought was heard and was judged on. That has not happened since. The result thereof is that all the old licenses, green cards and old licenses that used to be stuck in the ID books, in all practical terms, are still deemed to be valid today. I've got a twofold question for the Commissioner. From a comparison between the database of the old license system and the new system, there must surely be an indication of how many old licenses are still valid. Then secondly, when I look at the turnaround strategy and plans, I do not see anything to indicate that there will be an attempt made to settle this court order either by going back to court or by talking to the applicants. Without doing that, is there any possibility that you will ever be able to completely implement this act? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The fourth hand.
Thank you, General. Andre Pretorius from the Professional Firearm Trainers Council. In 2002, I was part of an advisory forum that, amongst other things, looked into the issue of the fit and proper status and the mental stability of an applicant. And the conclusion that we came to looking at that whole structure was that, firstly, there is no definitive measurement to measure a person's mental stability for the use of a firearm. It can only happen in the reverse. You can check to see if there's evidence that suggests that a person is not mentally stable. The other thing that came out is that if such a measurement is put together, it would first impact the police, the military, and the security industry in terms of the firearms handed out there, which had massive implications for the country. It was then suggested that we look at the background checks to ensure that no evidence comes forward that would suggest that this person was not mentally stable, and that's why the background checks and the interview process was put in place. Can I suggest that we don't try and revisit this issue and train DFOs as psychologists, etc., or we certainly don't want to look back into the process of some kind of testing in that manner, but we look at the work that was put into the previous advisory forums and go with what the findings were in 2002.
Thank you very much, sir. Can I take the last hand? I think it's the last one that side.
I'm Valdi van Renen-Leroux. I'm from the Trauma Center for Survivors of Violence and Torture. Gang-related shootings in the Western Cape and the confiscation of firearms and artillery in Mitchell's Plain cannot be separated from what our learners are going through in our schools currently. I know that SAPS has a protocol with the Department of Education, and we are aware that there's been searches conducted at schools. I'd like to know from the Commissioner whether there's been any success in those searches, and in terms of the violence prevention strategy, given that the position is a gun-friendly society, how do we speak and how do we educate our learners in terms of using weapons illegally, firearms illegally? What has been the impact of these searches and the education campaigns that has been waged at schools, and how effective have the searches been?
Thank you very much for all the questions, and again, thank you for the men and which you've put the questions. I'm now going to afford the platform to the National Commissioner for the second response. Thank you, General.
The first question was around the online reporting system. I'm not aware that we have an online reporting system. I have said when I did the presentation that the system that we're, firearms control system that we're having, that we are looking into, we are wanting to assess how we can recapacitate that system to be able to factor in some of the modern systems management qualities that we would like to see there, such as e-applications, such as online reporting. So at this point in time, the system as it is does not have that capacity. And we're hoping that once it's evaluated and we get our feedback from CSIR in terms of some of our wish lists, we would be able to build onto what is existing to recapacitate that system and to allow it to do a little bit more than it is doing now. The other question was around a court order that found the minister and myself in contempt for not issuing license. I think like Mr. Groenewald, what one would appreciate are details around that so that we can respond to you more specifically. But also to say, indeed, we remain very concerned, it doesn't, first and foremost, any citizen whose rights are being infringed upon, it would be a concern. It would even be more so also, to economic citizens who are investing in our country, as you're saying. We take it seriously. We don't take it for granted. So we would like to look into that matter and see whether it has been remedied, and if they were delayed, what are the lessons that we can pick up out of the delays in remedying that situation. The issue of the green cards, I know it's, even though you didn't see it in the turnaround strategy, it's a matter that is on our radar screen. And I'm going to ask both General Jacobs to talk a little bit around this, because we're looking at avenues to say, are we going back to court to settle the matter? Are we going to engage with the stakeholders? And when that is done, we will then approach the minister to make propositions, and it is stakeholders such as yourself that we will also be engaging with. May I ask General Jacobs to comment on this question?
Thank you, General. General, the issue of the a possible solution to the green licenses, the court case, is also addressed in the draft bill. There are proposals on how it can be addressed. Of course, I think that even before the bill goes to Parliament, if there could be discussions between ourselves and the applicants, and we could get a solution before the bill is in Parliament, I think that will actually be the ideal situation. General, the application was not brought by the SAPS, and as was rightly said, after the interim order was obtained, no further steps in taking the matter further has been done by the applicants. But I really think in terms of the proper implementation of the Act, I totally agree. It is a problem for the SAPS to recognize old licenses that were issued under an Act that has already been repealed, and in the meantime you have to implement the present Act. I really think it's one of the key issues that we need to address in terms of going forward of a full and proper implementation of the Act. Thank you, General.
There was a secondary question to that, to say how many green licenses do we have. I think they're just going through the system to get us the number, and I think at some point they'll give it to the facilitator during the course of the day. The other question was around the fit and proper status, and I think it was more a comment to say the issue of background checks remains crucial. And what we've been advised is that we should, as we take this matter forward, not reinvent the wheel, benchmark and look at what others are using, look at reviewing the body of existing knowledge as it has been suggested. We definitely will do that, and we'll take you up on that, because if there's work that has been done, it really behoves us to look at what is there and assess it for implementability, as well as leverage that work by benchmarking it with others, because I'm sure it's not a novel idea to us only. There should have been others who have done that before, so we thank you for that. And I'm hoping that the colleagues will engage with you so that we get your details. Okay. Then the last question was around Cape Town, the searches in schools, the engagement with the schools. I think, let me start off by saying the SAPS Department of Basic Education School Safety Program, and I'm sure the Deputy Minister is here as the champion, can talk a little bit more about it. It's very fundamental, because we would like to use it for multiple issues. One of those would be this very one, and the offer that we received earlier on, and many others, to start saying, how do we make sure that the relationship between our children and firearms is such that it matures at an early age because they are knowledgeable, they are educated, they understand the value and use of these instruments. So we take that as a platform that we can also further, utilize to ensure that we engage our children around these matters. We also know that in schools, in some of the schools, there have been deaths emanating from guns, children who brought guns from home and killed others. So it's clearly important for us not to start late, to start with them whilst young. We're doing the same with drugs. We're doing the same with, other general education around issues of crime, because it's important for them to be, child crime savvy, citizens, children who are crime savvy, who in future would be adults who are safety and crime savvy. So that's a platform we will continue to use. The searches are very crucial because when we do that, the children know that if they are carrying wrong things, should it be the day of police to search, they would be found with those illicit, whether it's drugs, whether it's guns. I think it's yielding. It is necessary to do so because it helps them also to know that it's wrong to do it, and if I'm found with that, it is a wrong act and there will be sanctions for that. But also to say at any given time, the police may come in and come and do the work. And I think it's a partnership that the Department of Education requires. I think it's extended parenting in the absence of their parents. We help the school as surrogate parents to keep the school as a homely and controlled environment. So I think there's value in terms of that. If you just look at the Western Cape, a lot of what was happening 3-4 years ago in the schools, children are able to go to school, even the incidences that are being reported from schools have significantly reduced.
Thank you very much, National Commissioner. I think it would be fair for us just to wrap up our platform. We do have the CFR desk if there's other issues that are pending that we have to record, but we're also going to be looking at the summit report and we will be dealing with it together with the portfolio committee. And summarizing the platform that the National Commissioner said are there, we've got a community outreach framework which we're going to use as the tool to engage at the partnership level. We've got a community policing framework, and we're also busy with the development of a national crime prevention framework with all 9 provinces. This is just the reality of our challenges. You never win the battle in the battlefield if you're fighting against 2 soldiers. If we all get involved, which is at multidisciplinary collaboration, we will fight together. And I will close our platform with a quote from Nicholas Minolta: "Trapped by reality, freed by imagination." Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to the National Commissioner and her team, General Piecha. Can I invite the Honourable Minister to please take the chair? Thank you, sir. And the Honourable Beekman will do the introductions.
Morning, Minister. Welcome. Have a seat. Good morning, everybody. Honourable Minister, Honourable Deputy Minister, Honourable members of the committee, DGs, heads of department, delegates. I hope you're all well today. Do you have a good rest last night? And I think we're going to have a good discussion also today. A special word of welcome to the Minister of Police, for his keynote address today. Maybe just in short, he hails from KZN. I think most of you know his political career, but I think very importantly, coming to this portfolio, he served inter alia as a chairperson of a portfolio committee in the National Assembly. He was also chairperson of the National Assembly, a House chairperson, so he's got a very good legislative background. Furthermore, he served as an accounting officer, as a DG, who was also a provincial commissioner in the Correctional Service Department, so he's got also a very good grasp of the day-to-day issues of departments. And since last year, he's been appointed by the President as Minister of Police. And I think his 6 focus areas, for instance, focusing on the professionalization of the police, ensuring that we address the crime issue in the country, major priorities, and I think also now legislative reform, the amendment of the SAPS Act, but also, of course, the amendment of the Firearms Amendment Act, important issues. Minister, welcome. We are keen to listen to you.
No, thank you very much. Even though the introduction begins to sound like I'm dead, you begin to get an idea of what people are likely to say, as and when you're lying face up, 6 feet down under. Nevertheless, thanks for that, Honorable Chair. Let me also take this opportunity to, before I do acknowledgements, firstly, let me apologize for not being able to join this particular conference yesterday and even arriving late as well this morning and so forth. It's because I had other pressing matters. Otherwise, it would have been of great benefit also on my side to interact with various viewpoints on the issue of gun control and management thereof of this particular situation within our society. So I lost out in a sense that I can only interact with the written material post this particular conference. I would like to also acknowledge the chairperson of the Deputy Minister of Police, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police, and the honorable members that I hear, the National Commissioner who has had to step out to another engagement, and the police, senior police management that is also here, stakeholders that I hear in their order of significance, and let me just say that all protocol is observed. My starting point is that we have the National Development Plan in this country as things do stand. And Chapter 12, which focuses on building safer communities, states that by 2030, people living in South Africa should feel safe and have no fear of crime. Women, children, and vulnerable groups should feel protected. They should have confidence in the criminal justice system to effectively apprehend and prosecute criminals who violate individuals and community safety. Close quote. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the question that confronts all of us is how do we build a feel safe and secure environment? And related to this question also is another question as to whether is this achievable through gun ownership or proliferation of guns in our society. The third question that also this issue poses is what is the gun ownership and proliferation of guns symptomatic of in our society? In other words, essentially what we should also begin to engage on and about is what does it say about our society? In my view, I would venture to say that if I attempt to confront some of these questions, if not all of them, I would venture to say that this is indicative of a social and economic problem. All of us need to accept and acknowledge that we have a society that embraces violence, harbors the belief that all social ills can be settled through violence, or that the barrel of a gun bestows one with power. We also have a society that is fragmented along the lines of class, race, and social standings that are in contestation. In other words, you will also come across a situation where one group or sector of society exercises power over the other, and this pattern is not only confined to class or social strata, but also in social relations themselves, from one individual to the next, including from one gender to the next. As a society that is aimed at building a human rights culture within itself and for itself, the critical question we need to ask should be, how do we foster conditions of peace and harmony in our society? Certainly, it is not going to be attained through gun ownership or proliferation of illegal guns. Another point to be taken cognizant of is that indeed there is a direct relationship or correlation between patterns of violence in our society and the extent to which we want to own guns either legally or illegally. We also need to regulate and put effective measures of gun control, and we should also intensify efforts at a societal level to deal with the occurrence of social ills. In essence, what this means is that the question of gun ownership, gun control, prevalence of illegal gun ownership in is a societal matter. No amount of adequate policing would on its own necessarily resolve our social ills. Regardless of the issues stated above, the sad reality, though, is that in our society, we have an accentuated level of gun ownership. Accompanying this phenomenon is the issue of illegal firearms. Therefore, a conference or symposium of this nature is relevant and is a welcome initiative, and it is worth applauding. Having acknowledged this reality, it indeed begs the question as to what needs to be done to produce progressive change in our society. And if we are to confront this question, there are few focal areas that would require our resolve. The first one is the question of stakeholder partnership. We need to mobilize stakeholders from the criminal justice system, various communities, business, faith-based organizations, the media, and so on, to create a buy-in for new initiatives for implementation. The second area is the need to focus on problem-oriented policing. In other words, engaging in hotspots. And we can only do so through an examination of local crime incidents, including an analysis of calls for service and investigations, be it intelligence and arrest reports. The South African Police Service can identify patterns, trends, and hotspots to proactively target with resources and policing efforts. Related types of criminal activity typically associated with gun violence, such as illegal drug sales, should be included in such analysis. Information resulting from the analysis should be communicated in real time to police officers on the field and incorporated into patrol, tactical, and investigative operations. The third area is the question of community involvement. And in this regard, taking into cognizant the overarching goal of enhancing community safety, police will need to design better ways to engage the community in gun violence reduction and crime prevention strategies. Good public policy and advocacy efforts are critical components of a comprehensive gun violence reduction program. For this to be successful, we need to place an emphasis on the need for communities to work together with law enforcement agencies. You may be all aware that the Firearm Control Amendment Bill has been taken through cabinet process, and the bill in question in brief, seeks to address itself to better licensing, accountability, and developing a strategy to improve firearm registry, amongst others. The bill is out for public comments and inputs. We are of the view that this is a critical piece of legislation that creates a platform for all South Africans to effectively deal with this problem. We recognize that there are anomalies in the current context of gun ownership in this country, such as instances where one individual owns 436 licensed firearms. And may I also state that that's an individual 3 years ago in your province, Madam Deputy Minister, Free State. Or in the recent case, for an example, of an accused at the North Gauteng High Court, wherein it was revealed that he had licenses for over 50 guns. Surely we agree that this bill, amongst other things, should be in a position to address some of these anomalies. Further, the bill raises the three critical questions. The one area is, of course, around the issue of firearm licenses. It seeks to focus on systemic improvement in the licensing application process, with an emphasis on increasing designated firearm officers in priority police stations. It also seeks to standardize the competency period to be within a 5-year period. It also addresses itself to the issue of increasing capacity of the Firearms Appeals Board through a provision for the Minister to assess and evaluate the demand of firearm applications, and where necessary, direct an increase. The second area is the issue of better accountability, and the focal point here is around the issue of ballistic sampling. If a firearm is used in the commission of crime, it should be easier to trace it. And the microdot system will assist in identifying a firearm even if the serial number had been filed off, and this will be phased in through state entities, security companies, to individuals. The last area, of course, is around the question of the need to develop a strategy to improve the firearms registry, which in itself will focuses on promoting responsible gun use, minimize loss and theft of state guns, and prescribe minimum sentence of at least 5 years in instances of serious abuse of firearms. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact is that all stakeholders do need to put a shoulder to the wheel to confront our weaknesses in our society. And this means that we need to change the overall societal outlook, even when it comes to these specific matters that we are all here gathered about. In this regard, the Ministry of Police has committed itself to initiate a process of a national dialogue focusing on efforts to reduce levels of violence in our society. The envisaged national dialogue is currently proposed for April this year, 2015, and we'll hope that such an initiative will be one other step in contributing to a less violent society. As we had said earlier on, that when we discuss the question of gun control and ownership in our society, we should always correlate that with a social culture and social outlook that we have as society, our eagerness to embrace violence, amongst other things. Thank you very much.
To all the speakers who follow, if you could follow this example, we'll get there. Thank you to the Minister for a succinct presentation and raising quite critical questions. I will not, at this stage, repeat those questions. I'll reserve them for my summary because it takes together very well some of the broader underlying thematic questions that were raised yesterday about what kind of society we want and the role that guns play in that. So thank you, Mr. Minister. We'll take some time for questions. Again, please, I will try to go to those people who have not spoken before. Take the liberty of, again, please, introducing yourself, just saying where you come from, restrict yourself to one question or one comment, and we could then increase the amount of rounds we have. Is that okay? So in the first round, there was a number of people who spoke. They've been acknowledged. I want to start with the lady over there because her hand was up earlier. The advocate's hand was up earlier. Norman's hand was up there. So was the two hands at the back. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 for the first round, and then I'll come up here. Is that okay? Thank you, everyone. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Program Director, Honorable Minister, and honorable members and members attending the summit. My name is Kuses Belinda. I'm from the Royal House, from the Khoisan, but I'm also an ex-police officer, which used to work at the police station in Manenberg. I'm going to get straight to the point, Honorable Minister. 43 firearms got missing at Manenberg police station in the year 2005. And I was the whistleblower on that. The story of that has escalated to the fact that I was victimized, intimidated, brutally sexual harassed. I took steps to court for sexual harassment. And in essence, I was sent to 9 different police stations. Minister, I would like to bring under your attention the EAP program for SAPs. And that is why we have such a lot of police officers committing suicide. The pastor, the union official, the psychiatrist, those people testified against me. It was all fabricated. But Minister, I would like to bring under your attention that those 43 firearms that was sent to Manenberg police station from Fori got stolen again at that station. And while I was whistleblowing, they needed to get rid of me. So in essence, remove me out of the equation. I had a lot of baggage pertaining that. And 10 years down the line now, 10 years down the line, there's a Nyanga cluster. Minister, I beg you, with all due respect, I want you to remove those clusters, and these are the following names. Yes, I need to say it because why? It's not going to stop.
Hold on, no.
It's
you
not
can
gonna
give
stop.
the minister the names. You've asked the minister to look into something, and that we respect. And you've asked the minister to also consider the, what is it, the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, and saying that may not be serving the interests of the members well. And that you're saying, and given an historical fact about what happened,
Yes.
if it's still happening today, then that should be a concern for the minister. Let's rest there.
Yes, I just
Any
want to
names,
say to
hold on,
Minister,
any further
I just want
names
to say
you
to
can
Minister,
please hand directly.
if there's a war starting now, Manenberg would win that war. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for your input. Can I go to Abhikar Arnsa? And then the 2 other hands are acknowledged, and then we'll come up. Yeah.
Thank you, and good morning, Honourable Minister. I would have loved to, or would have preferred to ask this question of the National Commissioner, but my hand wasn't recognised. But it relates to what you stated in your address, and it concerns the declaration of unfitness to possess a firearm. The National Commissioner indicated in a presentation that in terms of Section 102, some 8,605 individuals accounting for some 10,611 firearms were declared unfit to possess a firearm. We don't know of which period this declaration covers. We also didn't hear from the National Commissioner how many persons would have been declared unfit by the courts in terms of Section 103. Firstly, just a brief comment, that's clearly disconcerting that such a relatively high number of individuals bearing a substantial amount of firearms were declared unfit to bear firearms. And we don't know, certainly from the courts, if such declaration were made, which crimes they would have committed. But my question is this: given that a key platform which we subscribe to, and I'm speaking as a SAFA person, to what extent can civil society become more involved in assisting? And it relates to a much earlier question, I think, from the person in front here, in assisting in the registry in determining the fitness of individuals to bear firearms. And here I'm thinking more of the community police forums. I know, having acted for the police in several matters, I know there are issues around confidentiality, secrecy, and so on. But it seems to me that even amongst, and I know the fight against corruption is one of the challenges that was highlighted by you and by the National Commissioner. But given that that information seems to be leaking out anyway, it seems to me that the local communities are better placed and in fact probably best qualified to give input into the fitness of their other compatriots in their various communities or clusters to whether they should be given firearm licenses. And I think this will contribute substantially towards the reduction of the use of both legal and illegal firearms. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Claire Taylor and I'm from Gun Free South Africa. My question picks up on the National Police Commissioner's input around acknowledging corruption in the firearms control management system and spelling out strategies to address this. But it is addressed to the Minister of Police, as I understand that he has the report of a committee of inquiry that was established by the previous Minister of Police into fraud and corruption in the firearms control management system. And the question is, would that report be made public or parts of it? And a second part is, would the Minister share some of those findings and recommendations from that report in this forum? Thank you.
Thanks, Chairperson. My name is Boniso Kulu from the Firearms Appeal Board. My question is very short but long. The Minister in his input spoke about the investigation, but I would therefore then like to make a proposal that as I believe that we all gathered here to deal with the reduction strategies, considering the fact that the crime mainly in South Africa, much of it is committed through guns. And we also know and understand that in terms of the police, we don't have the specific unit that deals with the investigation of firearms. Will it then not be proper then to have that unit or to reintroduce it so as to have the unit that will mainly focus in investigation of firearms and also to be able to come up with or to give the stats in terms of illegal firearms and in terms of the firearms that have been stolen wherever, missing firearms and all, because they will be mainly and solemnly dealing with firearms. So they will be in a position to give the correct data that will assist any forum and also the department itself. That will be my proposal. Thanks, Chair.
No, thank you very much for the questions. In my response, I think some of the questions, they do a little bit of some dovetailing in one form or the other. So in one form or the other, I will attempt to also merge some of the questions that were posed. Firstly, I do not have much detail about what happened in 2005. I'm just a new employee, just about 10 months old, I suspect, in this portfolio. But I would really love to get more detail of what transpired, what happened, and what happened to a number of other things. And I think the allegations that you were attempting to make, and you were somewhat stopped, correctly so, not to mention names, also, I would think, serious allegations, because those are also allegations that, in a sense, impact on the overall outlook of the institutional culture. In South Africa today, we have serious problems around issues of accountability, for an example. So it's just a horrific experience that you thought something wrong was being committed, but in the process you got victimized, and it looked like, it also does sound like it was structural in a sense and so on, and I think that's a worrying point in a way. So I think I would love to get more of that kind of information. I think the point, Mr. Adensa, that you are raising correctly, so I think you should have raised it with the head of administration in the form of the National Commissioner. But I would think that if amongst the senior police personnel that are here, if there is a response, I would also allow them or any one of them to basically talk about the question of declaration of unfitness to possess a firearm. But the critical point that you are raising, which I think is extremely important, is a question of community involvement, even when it comes to the issue of declarations of that particular nature. Because it is only at a community level, for instance, if nobody knows me here, but if nobody does, I'm just saying here, nobody knows me. But the people who know me better are the people that I live with at a community level. They can then tell you better stories about, my pattern of behavior at a community level and everything else and so forth. Now, so I think that's a critical point, and that's the point that I was also raising earlier on to then say, if we're dealing with issues of this particular nature, we should encourage more of community engagement, and we need to be deliberate about it, not be incidental in one form or the other about it, but go out there, make sure that it is part of a systemic approach to deal with issues of gun ownership and control in our society, that you have community inputs. Now, the advantage with South Africa is that there is no place in this country that doesn't have an organizational structure of one form or the other. In our own institutional setup, as you said, as you alluded to this particular point earlier, is that you have community policing fora, for an example. So how do we deal with such matters even at that very same level and so on? I'm not too sure about what, because I wasn't here earlier on, what was it that was said with regards to the Central Firearm Registry? And I would guard myself deliberately in terms of what I need to say. Because there is some work that is being undertaken, for an example, to deal with the issue of the weaknesses as we have them in the Central Firearm Registry. I think somebody spoke about, it was a lady somewhere there, the back spoke about Manenberg. In other words, beginning to, the problem in Manenberg and other areas in the Cape Flats, for an example, is also the question of gang-related violence and so forth. So what we also have begun to notice is that some of the firearms that are also used by gangsters around here, you can also trace them to the Central Firearm Registry. Now, that's a weakness of sorts. And I'm not going to delve into the details in terms of, yeah, then what, and what exactly are we following through and so on. I'm just simply saying, firstly, we acknowledge that there's a problem. It's at a systematic kind of level there. And that problem impacts on also some of the activities that are, taking place down here. Thirdly, is that there's further work that needs to be done. That we're still conducting, and I'm just going to leave it at that particular level. Now, the reintroduction of a unit for investigations around issues of firearms and firearm control and so forth. I think what we also need to take into account is that when we address ourselves to such issues, we should be somewhat holistic, because if you go to different sort of corners of South Africa, for an example, there are these repeated calls around the question of reintroduction of units and whatever. So it shouldn't be seen in isolation of that bigger debate, in a sense. So we will have to take stock of such issues. The only advantage, Mr. Kudu, that we have is that we have a firearms control amendment bill, and that point has got to be made somewhat as part of the contribution for consideration, for an example, within that context. If you were to ask me as to what my opinion is, is that will it work better? Will that be a better system and so forth? The truth of the matter is that I will not be able to provide you with an answer as things do stand, in a sense that it requires quite a lot of processing, thinking, analysis, and evaluating all the other factors that are part of this particular problem. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, new round of, said I'm going to go up here. So one, you're both from the same organization. One of you want to speak, both of you want to speak? One, okay. Folks, you need to understand, you're all professional lobbyists. You have a number of platforms, you have a number of avenues in which to express your views. I want to err on the side of giving ordinary South Africans like yourself the best opportunity to speak. Maar as hy gepraat het vir 2 dae, man, asseblief tog. 1, 2. Again, short, sweet, to the point. There was a lady over there, guy. And then let's go to the lady. Take those rounds. We'll come to you next if there's another round.
Good morning, Mr. Minister. My name is Paul Oxley. I represent the Sports Shooting Forum here. Honourable Minister, we're eager, even anxious, to assist wherever we can. Many of us are subject matter experts on firearms, and we bring that knowledge and that expertise to the table. There are many areas that we can assist with, but being of assistance also behooves us at some stage to point out potential pitfalls and red herrings, dead ends in the road, so as to avoid that we waste resources and time while traveling down the wrong road. And I was concerned, Honourable Minister, to hear you mention the issue of ballistic fingerprinting and also the issue of microdots. Myself and a bunch of my colleagues met with the Microdot Association last week, Thursday, and I'm sorry, that's a red herring. There's no way that can be made to work. There's no way that the technology is capable of doing what is presented in the bill as the requirements. The microdots bring nothing to the table that isn't already extant on every single firearm that's produced with a serial number engraved in the metal. A firearm is not a car. The national standard that's being discussed in terms of the bill is the national standard relevant to motor vehicles, where there's a great many places to put a microdot. In a similar application on a firearm, you'd only be able to get a couple of dots on, and they would be easily visible and easily found and much easier to remove with a wire brush than what they are on a motor car. So just to help us to avoid traveling down a dead-end road. The other issue is with ballistic fingerprinting. Now, this is something which is attractive to all of us. The idea of being able to pick up a cartridge case off the ground of a crime scene and trace that back to the firearm that fired it, and trace that firearm back to the person that firearm is licensed to or was licensed to. It's attractive indeed. However, it's pretty much the preserve of science fiction. It's the stuff that Hollywood talks about. It's NCIS and CSI, and it's not reality. The ballistic fingerprinting experiment was tried in the US and Honourable Minister, I would suggest that with resources which we don't have, they tried to figure out if this could work. The state Senate hearings in the state of Maryland just recently found that the ballistic fingerprinting identification machinery that they'd bought had been sold 5 years ago because it was proven to be of no value. The experiment was hugely expensive. It doesn't produce any appreciable results. I think the statistics are that if anybody, there was nobody actually in the entire period that they ran the program that was actually convicted as a result of ballistic fingerprinting. But if somebody were to be convicted, there was, I think, a 1 in 5 chance that person would be incorrectly convicted, because there are so many factors that change on a casing, on a bullet that's fired from a gun, that it just doesn't work, unfortunately. So forgive me for pouring cold water on plans, Honourable Minister, but I think it behooves us to save time and effort rather than go down primrose paths that lead to nowhere. Thank you very much.
Minister, my name is Damien Enston. I'm from the South African Defensive Pistol Association, so from sport shooting side. Just following on what Paul said, my question is perhaps more direct in, do the police have the capacity and the resources to actually deal with microdotting and implementing the system and implementing ballistic testing, and how is the police going to implement this if it somehow comes to be? Thank you.
Honourable Minister, my name is Guy Lamb. I'm from the University of Cape Town. Just a very brief comment and almost an appeal is I'd like to commend you for re-emphasising the problem-orientated police approach. We know from studies that have been conducted that this has been particularly effective in reducing levels of firearm crime and the illicit proliferation of firearms. And the appeal is very much around, if possible, to try and partner with universities and research institutes so that we can understand the effectiveness of this. Because it's only from studies where there have actually been rigorous scientific study has shown that this has worked, and I think we would be able to learn a lot from it rather than just being a kind of closed police shop. I think it's important from a society point of view to understand how important this policing is and what impact it can have. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Well, just a quick comment. I think that the approach that the Minister presents needs our support. Basically, the issue around stakeholder community participation and community involvement is an important in dealing with the challenges that we have, particularly when we deal with the issue of proliferation of guns, society, involvement of community, how to root it out. That's important. I think it needs all our support. But what I want to ask the Minister in terms of that approach presupposes that everybody, including the officials and the police managers at the station, understand what has to be done. Most challenges that one come across is the issue of empowering the officers at the station to understand the approach, but also to protect those who come forward with information in order to root out the problem. Generally, you have the leakages of informations that are provided to the stations in terms of dealing with a particular matter. Now, I don't know whether you're considering, or the National Commissioner is not here, considering the kind of you operate with this, with orders, with national orders, that could help managers and the police management to understand how to deal with a situation like that, particularly with the information that deals with, that involves communities who are invariably don't have the power to protect themselves against, particularly if you look at the Western Cape situation. What is it that you are going to embark upon in terms of empowering them to understand that? The last point I want to make, sitting in a room with all the practitioners that we have, I still want to hear coming out from the collective voice with this common concern that we have, how to close the leak. There is a leak, and the leak is not only public sector, it's public sector and private sector in terms of the proliferation of gun and the problem. How do we close that particular leak in dealing with the Amendment Act that we're talking about? I must say, at the moment, I'm not hearing it coming out. I'm not hearing that ownership of that particular problem. I'm hearing more about what cannot be done, what is the problem, not so much about what is the collective solution for us as a concern, both private and public. So it's a situation that is not helping us sitting here, because we're going to be dealing with this particular legislation later. So I'm just making a simple appeal that yes, there are concerns of turf, there are concerns of business, there are concerns of this and the other. But the common purpose should be how to close the leak, and we understand that there is one. So that's really the appeal I'm making, that, and it's not for the minister, it's for all of us. Let's confront the issue that affects us, that cause so many murder homicide in our society, irrespective of later what will then become the issue. That's the appeal I'm making, Chair. Thank you very much.
Nadine Pryor, South African Dealers Association. The Central Firearms Registry's database of firearms is hopelessly incorrect. It's shambolic at best. What is being done to fix this, and what is the time frame, and also the time frame for the turnaround strategy? Thank you.
So happy to hear that. Let me just start with the last question. I deliberately stayed away from further detail on the issue of the Central Firearm Register, precisely because you will appreciate there is quite some work that is being undertaken in dealing with the specific issues there. So I think it would be best that we can only stop at the level where we say, look, we acknowledge there's a problem, but also that problem requires to be fixed. I hinted on just the idea in terms of what the nature of the problem is and how it affects particularly, some of the happenings here in the Western Cape. So I think as and when we are certainly ready to make public announcements, we will certainly do so, including the whole question of the turnaround strategy, for an example, including timelines in terms of how we want to deal with that particular matter. Now, the majority of the points that were raised, and it's just a proposal that I would want to make, because in the discussion in this forum, there has been somewhat of a shift, and that shift is zooming into the firearms control amendment bill. And I do think that we do need to have, and now I'm just proposing chair on my feet, of chair of the portfolio committee, that perhaps we do require a structured process also led by the portfolio committee in processing public engagements and views and comments and so forth. Because most of these points, for an example, I think the gentleman here, you would have said more and quite a lot around the issue of microdots and advantages, disadvantages and so forth. And you can come in with a specific sort of input, for an example, which would also assist in informing the ultimate end of what the outlook should be of the firearms control amendment bill and so forth. The same also about the question of the point I think around issues of capacitation, empowering our police personnel at a police station level and so on, because what you are essentially identifying, you're identifying that as and when we take a particular policy approach, there is going to be at a structural institutional level a need to focus on how we build adequate and required levels of capacity, for an example, to deal with the challenges of the policy approach that we're taking. So I would really encourage that that process, the sooner the better, if the portfolio committee really so decides to structure it and take so that we have properly worked out kind of inputs that zoom into the question of the amendment bill as we have it. Lastly, the question of partnerships, quite important, and I think you said something about, you said you come from UCT, isn't it? It's key. It's very, very, very important. The kind of partnerships that one is speaking to is that there have to be partnerships that are of a wide-ranging kind of nature. For an example, you talk about community involvement, but also sectoral kind of partnerships of sorts. You probably have got something that you would be in a position to offer around a policy approach, even a suggested sort of direction, for an example, as a research institute. And I think we will encourage something of that nature. So those are the comments that I want to make. I wasn't aware, for instance, of did you say the state of California? I'm not sure. On microdots. Oh, Maryland. Okay. Maryland.
Specifically, the state Senate hearings from the state of Maryland when they actually dismantled the ballistic sampling process. But they were also referring to the state of California, as you rightly say, Honourable Minister. California came up with initial findings that was then supported by the National Academy of Sciences in the United States, and they completely scrapped the concept of ballistic fingerprinting as non-workable.
Okay. I wasn't aware of those particular sort of facts and so on, and I think it's also the part of work in processing this piece of legislation that takes a research kind of a format as well, which will assist us in finally have a piece of legislation that is relatively strong enough to assist us to administer properly the question of firearms in our society. Now, I'm not too sure where Deputy National Commissioner has told you whether the issue raised by Mr. Arends there on the firearm, did he say what? Competent? No, not competent.
Section 102, Minister. 103.
Yeah, Section 103, yes.
Okay. General Nhlala will provide the first response on that, Minister.
Let me just, because I've been told you'll respond, of course, but let me just take this opportunity to thank you to allow me to talk to you, because I'm told that I should now shut up and sit down. That's what he said. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Minister and the Deputy Minister. On the question of persons declared unfit by the courts on Section 103, the figures that we have from our systems is 1,604, those that are declared by the courts, since the inception of the Farm Control Act. Thank you, Chairperson.
And thank you for that. Folks, it's tea time. We have the Honourable Deputy Minister up after tea. There's a lot more to be said about the firearm registry. There was a few hands before the break. I've seen your hands. You will be up next, provided you want to ask questions around the firearm registry. Is that okay? Thanks very much. And again, I say, lobby during tea time, folks. Get to have a space to speak beyond this.